Good evening and good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm in the East Coast, so it's a good evening here. Welcome, everyone. My name is Sumik Tiger. I'm a Master Information Cybersecurity Student Rep of DEI GBA School of Information at UC Berkeley. I'm honored to be your moderator for this evening with Juliana Gomez. Today we celebrate the accomplishment of women who have blazed a trail in the technology industry and acknowledge the ongoing challenges faced by women who continue to break barriers and strive for a gender equality. The tech industry has made a tremendous progress the recent year, but we still have a long way to go. Women continue to be underrepresented in the technology industry, and we must work together to change that. We need to create more opportunity for women to enter the field and ensure that they have resources and support needed to succeed and advance. As we embark on this event, let us acknowledge the incredible contribution of women in technology. Let's also recognize the challenges that women still face in the industry and lack representation. I urge all of you, all of us, to approach the discussion today with open mind, empathy, and willingness to listen and learn from one another. We must work together to create more inclusive and equitable technology industry for all. So thank you for all being here, and I look forward for an inspiring and thought-provoking event. And now I will hand it over to Juliana, where she's gonna talk next.
Thanks, Sue. My name is Juliana Gomez. Just like Sue, I'm a student representative for the DEIBJ, but while she's in cybersecurity, I'm in data science. So I want to thank two people who helped put this together. Tia Foss, who's our host tonight. She's the Alumni Relations, Fundraising, and Communications leader for the iSchool. And Gary Morphy-Lum, who you see on camera, maybe, and who is helping us through our technical difficulties. So thank you both. Okay, so before we begin, I would like to do some housekeeping. For those of you in the audience, if you have any questions, please make sure to put them in the Q&A box, because that's where we're going to see them. If you put them on the chat, we may not get to them. So our panelists will answer them as we go along or at the end, if we have time. So now, thanking the most important people in the room tonight, our three panelists, Sam King, Jane Harper, and Angela Williams, if she can join us, which she hopefully will, for taking the time to discuss with us. Our session will begin with a short introduction by the panelists, followed by some questions on our end, and we'll wrap up with questions from the audience. Okay, so we've spoken a lot, and now we want to hear from you. So Sam, would you like to begin by telling us a little bit about yourself, and then Jane can follow? Thank you.
Sure. Thank you very much. And thank you for organizing this event. It's great to speak to everybody today. I would say that the panelists are not the most important people in this webinar. I would say we all are very important in this webinar because we're trying to move forward the agenda for technology and women in technology in particular. So thank you again for organizing this. So I'm Sam King. I am the CEO of Veracode. We are a company headquartered in Burlington, Massachusetts. We were founded in 2006 and have been in the cybersecurity industry for quite some time. The particular area of cybersecurity that we focus on is around software security. So we help our customers and the community at large secure the software applications that are running their world. And this could be applications that are being built by their teams. It could be open source applications. It could be third-party commercial applications, et cetera. And we've had the privilege of doing this for 17 years and have seen a lot of change in the industry during that time period, a lot of advancements, both on the software side of the house and the cybersecurity side of the house. And it feels like everything is defined as software these days. So we feel pretty privileged to have the opportunity to help people secure the software that runs their world.
Thanks, Sam. That sounds amazing. Jane, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. First, I want to agree with what Sam said. The participants are the really VIPs here today. It is important that you take full advantage of the knowledge that's here in the room. We want to be able to answer as many questions as we possibly can. And I am always available if you want to ping me offline on LinkedIn. So I am Jane Harper, and I have over 18 years experience as a risk executive with deep expertise in information security, technology, and compliance. I started my journey off in risk management and transitioned into a very technical space as a techie, because I've always been a tinkerer from the time that I was a little girl and I was taking the radios apart and putting them back together. Not initially successfully putting them back together, but eventually with the right nurturing and coaching, I was able to put the radios back together again and come off of punishment from my parents at some point. And with that, I'll turn it over to Angela Williams.
Thanks, Jane, and thanks everyone for inviting me to be on this call. I think this is such a fantastic opportunity to connect and share our journey and stories and provide whatever advice that we can. I, like Jane, am definitely an open book. I enjoy sharing my story, being as transparent as necessary to help those who want to understand. How does the life in day-to-day responsibilities of a CISO functions? I am currently at UL Solutions. I'm their Senior Vice President, Chief Information Security Officer. I absolutely love cybersecurity. I think it's a fascinating topic, and every single day I kind of keep challenging my team of thinking through what's next, why, and who is it for. So I'm enjoying the conversation today and look forward to exchanging information.
Thank you all for being here. Okay, so I'm going to start with the questions. Angela, I'm going to start with you. And I want you to give us like tips. So we're going to have like key pointers. I'm going to sign them out with my finger so we'll remember the three. So what are the three challenges that you have faced as a woman in STEM, and how have you overcome them?
I think some of the challenges I face as a woman in STEM is believing in myself first and foremost. Sometimes we are harder on ourselves than others are on us in general. I think it's super important to have a confidence in making sure that you are good enough and you have the capabilities to achieve. The other challenge I face is working in an environment that is predominantly male and being able to stand my own ground, and then knowing exactly what I'm talking about, making sure that I'm able to articulate the what and the whys and interact with them in a way that's, colleagues, at the same time being respected as a professional. I think the last thing that I've kind of maybe struggled with a little bit is trying to really be clear on where I wanted to go in technology. STEM is such a huge field, and sometimes you just really have to focus on what part of STEM do you find as your sweet spot? Where is it you feel that you get the most passion? And so I took time to figure that out over my career so that I could pick a career that I was going to be passionate about, that I would get up every day and be really excited about participating in. And I would say it would be those three areas that I kind of struggled in the very beginning of my career.
Yeah, I can totally relate. And I think most of us can. So we'll go backwards. Jane, do you have any other challenges that you have faced? Top three?
Oh, absolutely. So I would say that over the course of my career, I have struggled with imposter syndrome. Not so much focused on other people telling me that I shouldn't have a seat at the table, but sometimes my own mind, my own brain, that own inner voice, like Angela said, that's very judgmental sometimes. Questioning whether or not I should have a seat at the table. The other has been connections and networking. Starting off as a techie way back in the day, now I'm probably dating myself. The IT folks were in the basement and we were typically cut off from the other areas of the organization. And so networking and building connections is something that I needed to do and I didn't do early on in my career, that I had to ramp up as I moved forward. I think the other is stereotypes. sometimes as a woman, you show up in the room, and especially as a Black woman, you show up in the room, and there are these preconceived notions about whether or not you should be there. And when you think about the governance aspects of tech careers, we're at the table, and not only are we at the table, we're there with a voice, and sometimes it's a conflicting voice for all the other voices that are there. So there is the, oh, we gave you a seat, how nice, but how dare you show up at the meeting and have a voice, and then on top of that, have an opinion that's conflicting the majority opinion. So I think those are three of the areas that I've had to overcome over the course of my career.
Yeah, I really like that you have a different voice, and that you all have different voices, and we all do, because yeah, it's been pretty male and white, I want to say, but it's changing, well, thankfully. Okay, Sam, what about your top three?
So I think I can relate to a lot of what Jane and Angela have said. If I had to augment what they've already raised, which are all great points, I would say, you know, the first thing is that the immediate challenge you face as being a woman in tech is that there are very few women in tech, right? So when you look around you, there are not a lot of people that look like you. And that, I think, serves to amplify the imposter syndrome that Jane was talking about, which is like, is this really for me? Because I don't see a lot of other people like me that are in my setting, right? And so, and that can feed on itself. So part of the solution to having women do more in STEM is to have more women in STEM, and the two things are very related, right? So I think that's like just challenge number one, the numbers game that we still continue to have to play, and we want more women in this so that it's not an anomaly to be a woman in tech. I would say the next thing for me would be ascending to senior level positions. And that is where the point that you know, Jane was making around the importance of a network becomes really important, because if you're trying to ascend to a senior level position, it's really great to have some advocacy on your behalf. And the way that you can create advocacy is through a very strong network of influential people, which in tech, a lot of influential people are men. And so like, you got to make sure that you have that network there. Okay. And then I think the third thing, and this may be, you know, this may be a debatable point, but I certainly find myself having to think through this. When you do get to a leadership position, you have the obligation to be the leader for everyone on your team. And yet at the same time, you really care about women in technology. So how do you promote the concept of more women in technology and furthering, you know, equity in this field, while being a good leader for everyone on your team, right? And the way that I've tried to do that is through creating allies. So opening up sessions like this to men and women, as an example, right? So we can all have empathy for each other's positions, but it's a balancing act.
Well, that's a perfect segue for my next question. So you can like continue off if you want. I was thinking, based on what you've all discussed on increasing the number of women and having allies and networking, what do you feel is a better approach to increasing the number of female leaders in STEM? Do you think that it's better to have it like a bottom-up approach, like have more people engage from the start, more women get into STEM fields like undergrad and graduate school, or from the top down, like have more female leaders, which will in turn recruit more females? Did my question make sense?
Totally makes sense. Hopefully I won't be cheating if I say yes, because I think we need both of those things. So I have a slightly different view when you talk about actually having women represented in the professional jobs in the STEM industry, and then maybe a different view when we're talking about encouraging women to take up STEM as their field of study in university and college, right? Because one of the things that I think we can do in the workplace is cast a wider net than just STEM when looking to encourage women to get into the field. So, you know, I've worked for a cybersecurity company where the CEO of that company was a woman and her degree was in English, right? And here she was leading a cybersecurity company as a CEO. So I think in the workplace, we should be open-minded to having people that have degrees and backgrounds that are broader than STEM entering the field, because you need all kinds of skill sets to be successful in this field that go beyond the technical skill sets. I think with respect to encouraging more people to pursue a STEM area of study, I think that's where we have to get to people early, right? Like I think engaging people when they're in school, in middle school, in high school, and talking about how tech is an area that anyone can be in, and you know, making it accessible, I think will encourage people to think about that as a field of study.
Yeah, I guess they are two different questions, and thank you for dividing them because I really like that approach. Jane, we're going backwards. So Jane, do you want to add anything to that?
My answer is yes as well. I am the Associate Vice President of Information Security Risk and Business Engagement for Eli Lilly and Company, and it's a wide scope. And we are a $28 billion international pharma conglomerate. When I look at my team, I have folks on my team who don't have traditional technology or even cyber background. So my security awareness and training program, which I call ISED, the Information Security Education and Development Team, because I think we are way beyond training and awareness when it comes to cyber. It really should be about education and development. Those folks have degrees ranging from communications to marketing. In prior lives, they've been teachers. And they do a fabulous job communicating the importance of our cyber program. So I completely agree. We don't want to silo ourselves to just a certain skill set. However, on the other side of that, I also know that there's this thing called street cred. So when I was coming up through the ranks, that was like really important. So I don't know that I would take someone who doesn't have the appropriate background and put them in charge of my penetration testing or configurations of my firewalls. But there is a place for everybody in cyber when we look wider. And I agree too, Sam, I think you said it, waiting until college is too late. We've got to start tinkering with the girls as, you know, little people, I like to call them, and getting them curious and nurturing that tinkering attitude the same way that my grandfather nurtured mine. And for that, I'm thinking elementary school to get started.
So everybody should take apart their radios, or I guess iPhones. I don't know. Okay, Angela, do you have anything else to add?
I think Sam and Jane have hit it on the nail. You need a top-down approach. You need a bottom-up approach. I think we have to take the stigma that you need to be super technical all the time to be in STEM. All the different backgrounds definitely work. To Jane's point, there are roles within security that does require maybe a technical background, but there's a lot of roles that do not. But most people believe, most women believe, I have to be very technical in order to get into that field. And that's not necessarily true. I'll take women from all kinds of backgrounds. I try to look at their competencies first and foremost and look at what they can actually bring to the table. As Jane talked about, risk management is less about the technology and more about the influence and conversations you can have with the business. So you need a really effective communicator. But then we also need women at the top of that pyramid in order to make the opportunities available for the women who are joining these organizations, coming in straight out of school or coming through from another organization, doing laterals. So we need a mixture of both.
Perfect. You're all segueing my questions wonderfully. Thank you so much for helping me out with that, because the next question is, Angela, what 3 actions have you taken at your company to, as you say it, move women to the top of the pyramid?
Oh, absolutely. So in my journey in this space, in my career, I have been extremely focused and passionate about bringing women to the table. I used to say, I'm not looking to be a trailblazer. I want to plow a runway. I want a runway wide enough for 747 to land. So women aren't coming in the door single file. We should be coming in masses. And so in order to do that, I create roles, of course, that are published and posted, but I encourage the women in my network to apply. I've called women and asked them, well, could you consider applying for this role? And they may talk themselves out of it. I'm telling them, please do not. Please apply. You are more than qualified. Let's just go through the interview process. You don't know what you're turning down until you actually have an offer on the table. So I try to influence and encourage women within my network to apply for positions that they may second guess themselves on. A lot of times we look at a job description, we think we have to check every single box in order to be qualified, and that is just not true. So my goal is I create positions, I ensure that the candidate pool is a very diverse candidate pool, and I also encourage women who would not consider applying, but I know they're an awesome candidate, to go ahead and apply.
I want to get on that runway, so thank you. Okay, Jane, what about you? What 3 actions do you take at your company?
So I've taken multiple approaches, and Angela's correct, because sometimes we send names to each other. And it goes back to, again, having the network and the connection. One of the things that I said to my sisters at EWF that are part of the sisterhood is that we have to build a legacy, similar to what Angela said, with these droves of women that are coming in. At some point, all of us will leave the industry. We will go somewhere and we will kick our feet up on a beach, or, you know, it's some beautiful villa, and we'll have grapes and wine and cheese and bread and olive oil and all those things. And when we look back, none of us want to look back and see that we've lost the gains that we've made. We want to see generations of women, legacy for years and years to come. It's not just important for us as women, but it's important for the industry. Look, you get the best products when you've got a multitude of skill sets and people sitting in that room. And I have seen, and I know from my own work, the power that brings to the table. So I do everything from mentoring and coaching to I can absolutely be the 911 call if something's going wrong. I do advocacy in the room, which is something I had to learn how to do about midpoint of my career. So when Stacy has said something that is profound, and then Rick repeats what she says, and he is now the best thing since the microwave, with no acknowledgement for Stacy, I learned to say, Rick, it's awesome that you agree with what Stacy said, or it's awesome that you built upon what Stacy said. I think that's great. Piggybacking in advocacy. Stacy, do you have anything you want to add to this great idea you gave us? And I had to do that after myself going into rooms and giving the idea, leaving out of the room, never being acknowledged that it was my idea, and not even, you know, them having the decency to include me on the project for the idea that I came up with. So I think we have to advocate in all forms. We have to advocate by building a legacy of women into the space. We have to advocate in the room when we see these things happen, so that women understand that they have our support. And then we also have to advocate sometime offline when that sister just needs a quick conversation because she's at the end of her rope.
That's wonderful. That's I'm taking notes because I'm definitely going to do that. Rick, I feel bad for you. Sam, do you have anything else to
add? So first of all, I love the runway analogy. Angela, I love that, because I can totally visualize all these women, you know, moving into this industry. And I think the in the room advocacy, Jane, that you talked about is fantastic, because those are those little moments that create a lasting impression for the woman involved, because she's like, well, I guess like my, you know, I guess I shouldn't bring up an idea again. It could turn that way, right? And you don't want it to go in that direction. And I think it creates a special moment for the men in the room as well, to acknowledge where the idea came from. So I love both of those things. You know, what I would say is, three things or a few things that we've done in the organization. First and foremost is we track how many women we have in the organization, right? Like if you don't track the numbers, then how do you know whether you're getting better or you're getting worse? And like, so we track how many women we have, in leadership positions. We look at this, and we've created a DE&I and belonging group, which creates awareness around these topics inside the organization, right? The second thing that we've done is, as we think about programs and benefits and policies inside the organization, we're thinking about diversity-friendly, women-friendly policies. So as an example, like I know one of the times when it was most difficult for me personally to be a woman that's working in tech or otherwise was when I had kids, right? And coming back to work after having kids was really hard, especially if you wanted to continue to ascend in your career. And so, one of the things that we provided as a benefit was help with childcare for those moments when you get the call from the daycare saying, like, you can't send your kid into school tomorrow and you've got a really important meeting tomorrow. What are you supposed to do, right? So creating those kinds of programs, those kinds of benefits in the organization. And then we also work with a lot of groups that promote diversity, in particular around hiring. So we've partnered with organizations like Power to Fly and so forth, where they provide a pipeline of diverse talent for all of the roles that we're hiring for. And then the last thing I would say is we took advantage of the pandemic and the whole work from home and what we're doing right here, right now, right? Having a conversation while being in lots of different places. We took advantage of that to move to a remote first culture. And that was a big change for our organization. We were very tethered to the office pre-pandemic, but we said, hey, we were forced to change during the pandemic. Might as well use this as a way to create a more family-friendly, including women-friendly, diversity-friendly way of working. So we've now moved to a remote first culture where everyone has the option to either be a remote employee or be a hybrid employee, depending on what works best for you. And we feel that that helps us with recruiting and retaining women that are trying to balance a lot of different things.
Yeah, those all sound amazing. Okay, so my next question is, what three key aspects do you feel are necessary for a leadership position in STEM? So Sam, you can continue, and then Jane and Angela.
Ooh, three. Okay, so for a leadership position in STEM, I honestly think that it has less to do with the technical aspects of STEM, because we're talking about leadership position here, right? We're talking about getting to maybe P&L responsibility or running massive cybersecurity organizations like Jane and Angela are for organizations that have billions of dollars in revenue at stake. I would say one is this ability to create a network and influence the influencers. I think that's really key. Like I talk about this. Women are very good at operating in their sphere of control. Like we have a list, we have a checklist, and we're going to check off all of those items and then some, and we're going to do this and do this and do this. And I think one of the things that I've come to realize is that the outcomes that I'm driving for, especially when you're in leadership position where it isn't just what you do, it's what your team does or what your company does, right? Those outcomes are influenced not just by the actions you take in your sphere of control, but what you can influence other people to do as well. So also thinking about your sphere of influence, that becomes a really important thing, I think, as you're moving into leadership positions and connecting into them and giving them the right context so that they make the right calls that ultimately help your team. Second thing would be communication. Like if there was one skill that I could just have, the one skill that I think we can all practice for our entire lifetime, which will help us in our personal lives, it'll help you communicate better with your partner, children, family, and it'll help you do better at work, is just honing your communication skills. And a lot of people think about communication skills as presentation skills. I think that there is an element that is underappreciated, and that is the art of storytelling. We're at the end of the day, when you're trying to get really difficult, complicated types of change to occur in an organization, if you can wrap that into a story that people can connect to emotionally, you're going to have a much easier time doing it. It won't be easy, but it'll be easier.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, those sound amazing. And being a good storyteller is a work in progress. It's takes a lot of time and patience. So yeah. Okay, Jane, what about your top three?
I would say emotional intelligence is going to be so important. It's one thing to be really smart, right? We can be really, really smart, and we can be really, really good at the job that we do, but that emotional intelligence, so that when you have those conflicts that will happen, I also think it's important that we are very transparent and honest. You will have conflict over the course of your career. The emotional intelligence helps you to navigate around it and through it, and allows you to still come out with empathy for the person you're having the conflict with and yourself. So I think emotional intelligence wrapped around with empathy. I don't want to steal Sam's thunder, because I mean, she really nailed it when she talked about storytelling, but I think it's so important that I want to add a couple points about it. Understanding the audience that you're talking to and being able to tell your story based on the audience that you're trying to get the story across to is extremely important. I would say if you want to go into this field, know that many times you got to justify budget, many times you got to justify head count, many times you may have to justify your own increase in pay. It's going to be so important that you know how to pivot and tell the right stories to the right audiences so that you have the appropriate level of influence. And then the other thing I will say is success is a team sport, play well. You've got to be able to work the bill before it gets to the floor. You've got to be able to work across the aisle. And that doesn't just mean with your peers or your leaders, but also even within your own team. Because you're going to be trying to win the hearts and the minds of not just your clients and customers, but the people who have signed up to support you, because many times they can work somewhere else. So you've got to be able to do those three things. Again, emotional intelligence with empathy, making sure that you can influence through the appropriate amount and type of storytelling, and never forgetting that your success is a team sport, so play well.
Jane, do you have like a phrase book? Because I feel like all of these are like posters. I want to plaster them all on my wall. And actually all of you have some great quotes that are going to come out of this. Okay, Angela, what about your top three skills for women in leadership positions?
So I will co-sign off on what Sam and Jane talked about. Those are very, very key. Storytelling, I think, was the number one for me. When you are talking to other leaders who are not a part of your space, they always want to understand the why. So you've got to be able to express to them, why should they care? And storytelling is good. I use a ton of analogies to make it very relatable so that people will understand how it impacts them, why it should impact them, why should they think it's important. And then that also then drives toward influencing decisions to be made. You need people to come along for the ride with you, and you can't do it by yourself. You don't want to force anything. You want it all to be collaborative, like being a team sport. You got to play nicely. So we all have to have those kind of conversations. So being an effective communicator, whatever your style of communication is, get very comfortable in that. The other part is being able to read the room. There's so many times you can walk into a meeting or even walk in with your boss, and if you're not able to read body language, words that were not said, read between the words that were said, sometimes you'll miss the message. So getting good at being able to read the room, take the hints when people are super silent and not necessarily leaning in and getting excited about what you're talking about, could mean that they just don't understand. So that's also a key skill set for leadership. It has less to do with the technology Being a good leader is about managing people. People don't leave jobs because of money. Sometimes they only leave jobs because of how much the work it is. They leave jobs because of their leader. And so it is our responsibility as leaders to be the best leader possible. Listen with an empathetic ear, pay attention to what your employees are talking about, be concerned, lean all the way into actually understanding and not just be a dictator. You've got to be more of a collaborator.
Yeah, 100%. Here's to great leaders. Okay, so we technically have like 8 more minutes of our webinar. So I'm gonna ask Sue to read the questions from the audience, and then if we have more time, we'll do more of ours. But I want to get to the questions the questions from the audience.
Yeah, thank you, Juliana. And this question from Sari Whitaker, basically she said, thank you panelists, and I agree with all of this. I have been in the tax for 33 years, and my career aspiration have always been to get to the C-level. I have been a director now for 6 years, and at the same time company for 9. I find it so challenging to get the next level, despite always being told that I'm rock star, excellent performance review, bonus accomplishment, and I add a value to the organization as a leader. My CTO is more focused on a leadership team, being very technical, and the leadership piece in a secondary or non-existent. I have a different perspective. While I have a deep technical background, I strive to be a great leader who hire, lead, and grow really smart people. LOL. So my question really is, should I look at an organization that aligns more to my value, or are there things that I should be doing different? That's the question.
Well, I'll jump in here. So I would say it sounds like you have been absolutely killing it in terms of what you have been delivering and how you've nurtured and grown your team, but it feels like it's not getting recognized the appropriate way from your immediate leader, immediate boss. And so I would say, first, advocate for yourself with other influential leaders in the organization, because it takes, especially when you're talking about promoting somebody to vice president or someone with a C title, most organizations will look to a consortium of senior leaders to provide their input, not just one person. And then, you know, if you've done that and there's still no path for you here, there are plenty of opportunities out there. Like maybe you do need to go find another organization that recognizes the talents you have. Like you are not beholden to this one company. There are tons of places that would be thrilled to have you.
I co-sign on what Sam just said. Advocate for yourself, have that conversation with other leaders, and to her point, promotions to that level are done like a consensus. They will go off and ask other people, and your boss is necessarily not promoting you, is that other people are influencing that person to make that decision. So they're already saying you're operating at this level. They believe you should be at that level, and he's just making the decision to sign off on it, or she's making that decision. The other part is, while you're doing that, there's nothing that stops you from shopping around, seeing what other companies have to offer. Know your worth. You know, I was in the same position you were in. I was the rock star and I got all the accolades, but I was going nowhere. And it was because somebody shared with me, when you're that rock star, sometimes a company does not want to unplug you from being the rock star, because then who's going to be the rock star when you go off and do something different? And that's a scary place to be. So they rather keep you there because you are driving value, you're executing to perfection, but there's no replacement for you. So I always think through, when I go places, if I'm gonna rock it out, I always have to have a succession plan. Somebody needs to be right there who can step in. So when I get moved on, there's no, missing the beat. So that could possibly be the challenge that they're facing right now too, because you are the rock star and there's no one to replace you.
I have suffered from the carrot complex. where I'm not getting what I think I deserve, and I decide I'm going to pursue other opportunities, and then someone calls and says, let's have lunch. We just want to talk about all the wonderful things we have planned for you in the future. Well, is that future 10 years, 15? I know people who worked at a company 20 years, 30 years waiting to get that VP role. So some of it is your own preference and what you're willing to wait for. The other thing I would say at this stage of the game is, are you getting any additional independent feedback on what you're delivering? Is the feedback just from your leader, or is it from a cross-functional group of leaders that might have visibility into what you're doing? Just to make sure that you're getting all of the feedback and some of it's not being left out or missed, so that they could do like Angela said and, you know, kind of hold you in that spot, or they may be afraid of, like what Sam said, it may be time to go. There's one more thing that I will say, and it's, we wrote a book, we, meaning me and a cohort of executive leaders, called Understanding the Game of Executive Leadership Strategies to Win. And in that book, there's a section called Sponsors, Mentors, Coaches, and Cheerleaders. Make sure you have not just mentors and cheerleaders where you are, make sure you have sponsors, because the sponsors are going to be the people who speak about you in the rooms that you don't have access to. And like Sam and Angela said, when you start talking about C-suite, that's not a unilateral decision in most companies. That's a group of people making that decision. So you want as many sponsors in that room as possible calling your name. Lastly, if none of that works, I'm sure your company's not the only game in town.
Well, you have 3 people who are willing to hire you, so find them on LinkedIn. Okay, Sue, I think, do we have any more questions from the audience? We have a little bit more
Yeah,
time.
we have 2 more, I think, and then that's it. I think we can wrap up after 2 more questions. One question is from Erica Suarez Valencia. How did you overcome the insecurity and difficulty you mentioned in the first question? So I think this is related in the first question, and how we overcome insecurity and difficulty.
Yeah, I can take that. So surround yourself with people who believe in you. When we don't believe in ourselves, it's so important to not be around folks who are pessimistic, Debbie Downers, which I don't like using Debbie Downers. Let's be, maybe it's a Dan Downer. But anyway, someone who's going to give you all the positive, plus, you know, some criticism, but they're going to always give you positive view about who you are. We are very hard on ourselves. We will take a look in the mirror and doubt what we can do. You want to make sure you're, you know, associating yourselves with people who actually want to see you successful, and they will continue to just pour into you very, very positive affirmations. But then you also have to adopt some affirmations for yourself. You have to turn to yourself and say, I can do this. I am worthy. I'm accomplished. All those things that you believe you should be, start speaking that out loud to yourself.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I would say, put yourself in the position of someone that is looking to hire, and then read your resume with that lens. And like, you know, someone in the chat had like a 4.0 GPA and a 3.9 GPA. I mean, oh my God, like, would you not want to, you know, have an interview with that person and seek to hire that person? I think we're so harsh on ourselves sometimes. Like, we wouldn't want to be friends with the person that talks to us all the time, because that voice can be not very nice. Put yourself in a different headset for a moment and just say, if I was looking to hire somebody and I read this resume, what are the things that stand out for me on this resume? And then that's you.
I think that it's also important to make sure that you have some type of process for handling imposter syndrome whenever, for me, she shows up. You've got to recognize it, and you've got to address it, and then you've got to wrap it up. One of the things I tell my mentees to remember, is that imposter syndrome only seems to show up when you're doing good things. When you're not accomplishing anything, when you're not making strides, when you're not doing anything, imposter syndrome is nowhere around. But when you're doing great things and you're on the precipice of even greater things, it shows up. So sometimes you also need to have a brag book, and your brag book should be really a scrapbook of all of the accomplishments that you've had over the course of your career, all of the kind notes and the kind words and the acknowledgements, and you just copy paste them into that book, you know, and you keep it so that when imposter syndrome shows up, you flip through the book and you remind yourself, oh, I have done some great things, which means that I can do great things again. And you embrace that energy and you move forward with it.
Yeah, great answer, and is very insightful to overcome all the challenge that even myself sometimes I have to face, and it's a great advice, and everybody has gone through it, and it is really insightful to hear from the leader like you, Jen and Sam and Angela. It's such a delightful to heard from inside perspective that have gone through it, you know. So
Okay, so it's 7:03. We have time. We have one more question. I don't know if our panelists have time to answer one final question, or should we wrap up here? Yeah. Okay, so Sue, can you read the final question, please?
yeah, this question is when trying to advance in your career, how do you manage conflict in general and conflict with other women? How do you get where you want to get in the most amicable way, especially if you are a rock star, like you're talking about? So is in the same question from Daniela.
I think, you know, immediate thought that comes to my mind is it's particularly unfortunate when you see that happening between women, because the first thing I would say is it's not a zero-sum game, right? If one woman ascends into a senior level position, it doesn't mean that another woman cannot ascend to a senior level position. And I think because there are so few women in senior level positions, sometimes it might seem like a zero-sum game. It's not. Like there are plenty of roles that we can ascend to. And then the second thing I would say is it's, you know, around conflict resolution, regardless of whether the conflict is with a woman or with a man, you have to first, I think, assess where's that person coming from. Context, the context in which person A versus person B are operating has so much to do with the conflict sometimes. And I think getting the context clarified, like this is how I see this situation. How are you seeing this situation that's making you arrive at a different conclusion point or a different proposal or recommendation? That is so important versus you know, just having this conflict on I think X and you think Y.
I would say seek to understand. Sam is spot on. It's seeking to understand and then not avoiding, because you avoid conflict and it flares. It's like adding air to a fire. Recognize that you have to take those challenges head on. But I would always recommend that you never do it in an audience of people. If you find that you're having repeated conflict with the same person over and over again, it may be an opportunity for you to take that person to lunch or get a coffee or something and sit down and talk, and start with the things you have in common, like the fact that you are both human, you both want to do a good job for the company, that you possibly need each other's support. But I think the first thing you have to do is seek to understand and then address the conflict head on, just not in front of a group of people. You want to try to take it offline and do what Sam said, get an understanding behind what's driving some of this conflict.
And I would just add, when you have to address conflict, it's very important not to put a bunch of emotion into it. Take a beat, take a step back, think about what is being said, done, and make sure that when you approach it, that you're approaching it with a very, very clear mind and you're not emotional about it at all, as much as possible. I mean, we're humans, and I'm not saying we can't have a feeling or emotion about it, but just want to make sure that as you try to address it, whether it's with a male or female, that you have clarity as to where the conflict resides. You're able to ask really clarifying questions. And I love what Jane said, seek to understand. People use words and they mean different things to different people. So ask these questions as you're having these conversations around the why and the what happened and what is it that we're not, meeting eye to eye about, so that then you can walk away with clarity. And you can also learn, because sometimes you may have said something or done something that someone misinterpreted. It wasn't even something you purposely did. And so having that person understand who you are and you also understanding how they function gets you into a better place about being able to communicate. But conflict's going to happen. We all just have to get better at it. It doesn't go away. There's no perfect world, but just take it head on, but always just take a beat. Just walk away from it for a second, clear your mind, and then approach how you want to solve the problem.
I'd like to add one more thing. If you find a situation where you try all those things and they just don't work, leverage your network. Leverage your network. Sometimes you can inherit trust through other people who have connections to the people that you are having conflict with. I talked about it in a LinkedIn post, and I will be honest, I was a little agitated by the whole situation, and actually posting it on LinkedIn actually helped me be less agitated. But I had a mentee who reached out to me, who told me that a senior executive female was saying some not so nice things about her and then telling people to pass on her. Well, I know the lady. And so I called and we had a conversation, and sure enough, my mentee was right. She was saying those things about her and telling people to pass on her and all of those things. And when I dug into it to figure out, why and what was driving that, it came to the fact that this lady didn't want the company to hire my mentee. She wanted somebody else to have that position. And she told me that her suspicions about my mentee were confirmed by the people at the company that she checked in with later, because she left the same company 5 months after my mentee was hired, and they didn't do any work together. So I was like, did she provide you with some work? Did she do something for you? Is there some real concrete feedback I can take back to her? And there wasn't. And so I had a candid conversation with this female executive, to which she said she would be more careful in the future because now she kind of understands both sides of the story, after I gave her some additional context on the feedback that she got. I wasn't able to fix anything that this person said about my mentee in other forums, but I would like to think that I helped to stem that tide from a future conversation perspective. So if you really find that you aren't able to make progress, leverage your network, but try to keep it confidential, leverage people that you really can trust, because you don't want to make it worse than it is. And see if you can get somebody maybe that has a relationship with the person to help advocate on your behalf.
Thank you so much for all those great tips. And now I think our time is up. But I wanted to thank you again for your time, for your wisdom, for your book. Jane, I already bought it. Well, I am looking forward to learning some more from you. I'll follow you on LinkedIn. And thank you to all our attendees, Tia and Gary, for helping making this happen, and Sue for being my co-host. It was wonderful having you today. Have a great rest of your
Thanks for
evening.
having us on. Great
Thank
conversation.
you. This has been awesome.
Yes, it has. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.